House of David Season 3 just dropped its first look, and honestly, nothing could have prepared me for what I just watched. This is not a slow burn anymore. This is a kingdom cracking open in real time, and episode 1 is already promising something so raw, so heavy, and so emotionally brutal that I genuinely had to pause and just sit with it for a moment. Because what we are about to see is not just a story about a man rising to power. It is a story about what happens when God's hand lifts off a king and that king refuses to let go. It is about a young man running for his life while somehow becoming the very thing an entire nation needs. And if the first look is already hitting this hard, then Season 3 is about to be something completely different from anything this show has done before. So we need to talk about every single detail, because there is a lot happening here, and most people are going to miss it. If you watch Season 2 all the way through, you already know that the finale left almost nothing unresolved in a comfortable way. Everything that could go wrong for Saul did go wrong, and the show did not try to soften any of it. It let it hurt. It let it sit heavy, and that is exactly what made it so powerful. But now with the first look at Season 3, Episode 1, it becomes very clear that the creators are not slowing down at all. They are picking up exactly where that pain left off, and they are pushing it even further. What struck me immediately about this first look is the atmosphere. The color, the lighting, the way every single frame feels like it is carrying the weight of something that cannot be undone. Season 2 had intensity, but this feels different. This feels like the final stretch of something inevitable, like watching a storm that has been building for years finally make landfall. And the reason it hits so different is because by now, after 2 full seasons, we are deeply invested in every single person on that screen. We know Saul. We have watched him from the beginning. We have seen the moments where he could have chosen differently. We have watched him receive mercy he did not deserve and waste it every single time. And yet somehow, the show has never let us fully hate him. That is the genius of how this character has been written and performed. Because even now, even after the massacre at Nob, even after everything, there is still this lingering sadness around him. You watch him and you do not just see a villain. You see a man who was genuinely chosen, genuinely gifted, and genuinely loved by people who believed in him. And then you watch what he did with all of that. That contrast is what makes Saul one of the most tragic characters in this entire story. And Season 3, Episode 1 is clearly leaning all the way into that tragedy. From what we can see in the first look, Saul is no longer the commanding presence he once was. The posture is different. The eyes are different. There is something hollow sitting behind them now. Like a man who has been fighting a war he already knows he has lost, but simply cannot stop swinging. His decisions in Season 2 did not just cost him loyalty and trust. They cost him something deeper. They cost him the version of himself that still believed he could be what God had called him to be. That version of Saul is gone now. And what is left in its place is something that Season 3 is clearly going to explore with brutal honesty. Because the Saul we are walking into Season 3 with is a man operating entirely out of fear, pride, and desperation. And those 3 things together in a king with an army are an incredibly dangerous combination. The political landscape around him is also falling apart in ways that go far beyond just his personal decline. The cracks that appeared in his inner circle during Season 2 are not healing. They are spreading. Abner, who was once one of his most steadfast commanders, is visibly pulling back. Not dramatically, not with a speech or a confrontation, but in that quiet, deliberate way that actually says more than any argument ever could. When a man like Abner goes silent, it means he has already made a decision in his heart. He just has not said it out loud yet. And Jonathan, who has arguably been the most heartbreaking figure in this entire show, is walking into Season 3 carrying an almost unbearable burden. He loves his father. That has never been in question. But he also knows the truth. He has known it for a while now, and the tragedy of Jonathan is that loving both sides of this conflict does not protect him from either of them. It just means he feels every single blow twice. Season 3, Episode 1 is clearly going to put him in a position where that tension is no longer something he can quietly carry. It is going to demand something from him. And based on the first look, whatever that something is, it is not going to be easy to watch. Meanwhile, on the other side of all this collapse, David is moving. And the contrast between where Saul is and where David is right now is honestly one of the most compelling dynamics this show has ever set up. David in Season 3, Episode 1 is not a man celebrating. He is not walking around with the confidence of someone who knows the crown is eventually coming to him. He is exhausted. He is carrying the weight of people who have chosen to follow him into uncertainty, into danger, into a life on the run with no guaranteed ending. And that is exactly what makes him so compelling to watch. Because David's strength in this season is not going to come from power or position. It is going to come from something much harder to fake. It is going to come from character. From the way he treats the people around him even when he has nothing left to give. From the decisions he makes when no one powerful is watching. From the moments where he could take a shortcut and he does not. That is the version of David that Season 3, Episode 1 is clearly setting up. And it is the version that the Bible has always described in this period of his life. A man being shaped not by comfort but by pressure. Not by victory but by survival. And the people gathering around him are gathering because they see something in him that they have not seen in a long time. They see someone who actually believes in something bigger than himself, which is a devastatingly rare thing in a world where the king on the throne has made everything about self-preservation. The group forming around David right now is still raw, still small, still figuring out what they even are. But there is an energy in that group that is impossible to ignore. These are not polished soldiers following orders. These are people who made a choice. They looked at the situation, they looked at David, and they decided that wherever he was going, they were going with him. And that kind of loyalty, the kind that is chosen freely under pressure, is the kind that actually holds when things get hard, which they absolutely are about to. Because the Philistines are not sitting still while all of this is happening inside Israel. They are watching. They are calculating. And King Achish of Gath is one of the more fascinating figures about to step into a bigger role this season, because his interest in Saul's decline is not just opportunistic, it is strategic. The Philistines have always been waiting for a moment of weakness, and right now, the most powerful kingdom in the region is practically handing them one. Saul is distracted, his army is fractured, his commanders are losing faith, and the political chaos inside the palace is spilling outward in ways that enemies can absolutely see and exploit. Season 3, Episode 1 is going to make it very clear that Israel's vulnerability right now is not just internal. It is visible from the outside. And that visibility is going to have consequences that build all the way to the battle that ends this entire chapter of the story. But what the first look also hints at is that David's relationship with the Philistines is going to be more complicated than a simple enemy dynamic. David, in this period of his life, was navigating incredibly complex political realities. He was not yet a king. He did not have an army with real resources. He was operating in the margins, making decisions that look strange from the outside, but were always rooted in something deeper. And Season 3 seems very committed to showing that complexity honestly, without simplifying it into clean hero and villain categories. Because the truth is that this entire period of David's life was messy. It was morally complicated. It was full of moments where there was no good option, only the least terrible one. And a show that has been this honest about human nature from the very beginning is not going to suddenly start wrapping things up neatly now. One of the things the first look makes very clear is that the spiritual dimension of this story is not being pushed to the background in Season 3. If anything, it is being brought even more to the front. And that makes complete sense because this is the period of David's life where his faith is being tested in ways that go beyond anything he has faced before. In Season 1 and Season 2, David's faith was always present, always visible. But in many ways, it was also supported by the presence of Samuel, by moments of clear divine confirmation, by relationships that reinforced what he believed. Season 3 is going to strip a lot of that away. Samuel is gone. The prophetic voice that guided and confirmed David is no longer there in the same way. And David is going to have to hold on to what he knows to be true without the same external support system he had before. That is a completely different kind of faith. That is faith in the dark. Faith when the circumstances are not confirming anything. Faith when every logical reading of the situation would tell you to give up or compromise or take matters into your own hands. And the show has always handled this internal spiritual struggle with a level of depth and honesty that I think genuinely separates it from most biblical content out there. It does not make faith look easy. It does not make David look perfect. It shows the wrestling. It shows the doubt. It shows the moments where he is hanging on by something that looks almost unreasonably thin. And then it shows what that kind of faith produces over time, which is exactly the arc the show is building toward with everything happening in Season 3. On the other side, Saul's spiritual state in Season 3, Episode 1 is going to be one of the most haunting things to watch unfold, because Saul was not always someone who rejected God. That is the part that makes his story so devastating. He started with a genuine anointing. He had real moments of divine encounter, and somewhere along the way, fear and pride and insecurity got in between him and everything that had been given to him. And by the time we get to Season 3, that distance has become a chasm.